go ahead first, Don.
You go.
I met Tom through the Land Trust about 30 years ago, and I didn't like him very much in the beginning, and Tom didn't care for me, but we discovered we had a new passion for fly fishing. And by the time we finished a season of fly fishing together, we were cutting our thumbs and becoming blood brothers. And Tom was on the board of the Land Trust. I was the executive director, and we were the only German Midwesterners in the group. And thank God we were there, because without our ancestry and our stubbornness, particularly he's Mr. Stubborn, we would not have gotten very far. And since that time, we've fished all over North America and done a lot of things together, and it's been a nice long friendship. I'm Jack Aley. I'm 78. I moved here in 1971 to work for the Associated Press. I worked for them for 3 years and then took a break and then worked for Maine Times for about 10 years. Took another break. I wrote a couple of books and got tired of writing and being super poor. And so I decided to become super, super poor and hire myself. Basically, the Land Trust hired me to run it in, I guess it was 87.
Tom Settlemire, I'm 85. The start of all this interest that I have began with growing up on a small family farm in Northwest Ohio. Two things happened. I had a grandfather and father that were incredibly dedicated to the conservation and the nature of soil. And I remember both of them telling me that the important thing you got to remember is that soil is our most important natural resource. More important than gold, oil, coal, because if we don't have it, we can't feed ourselves and we can't feed our people. Right. And that was hammered at me in so many different ways. So their love of the land, their love of the soil was great. I grew up in that environment, very much interested in science, and ended up getting a PhD in biochemistry, was working at the medical school at Ohio State, and this little place in Brunswick called Bowdoin College was thinking about starting a biochemistry program, and they were looking for somebody to come in for a couple years. It was my luck to get that position. We ended up staying, of course, the way it worked out, and it was the best decision I ever made. The Brunswick-Topsham Land Trust was the first local land trust to have a hired executive director, and that was Jack.
First one in Maine, for sure.
First one in Maine, that's right. He put the pressure on me. He said, I'm working with this organization called the Brunswick-Topsham Land Trust, and you've got to find out about it. This is part of you. That became part of what I really was interested in. And at that point, we had a small board that met in people's dining rooms and living rooms. From that, our whole projects began to grow, and we became interested in, I guess, we both had a focus that was in the same direction. And fortunately enough, our focuses were overlapped enough that we were able to work together pretty well.
And most of the things we wanted to, I think almost everything we wanted to have happen. It's a very unusual thing, have happened. Life is serendipitous. I would have never been involved with the Land Trust if my wife hadn't insisted that we find a place to live in Pennellville. So in '82, we bought 2 acres for $10,000. Right now, an acre out there you can't find one. The neighborhood began to understand that we were going to build something there in their view, that we were hippies from Bowdenham, that we were going to use our own wood. And those were all enough red signs that they tried to strike out the deal by going to the owner and saying, we can't have these guys out here. We managed to buy the land, and then just because I was very aggravated at being so rudely treated, although I treat other people rather rudely, I had the first couple loads of the white ash and dumped in the middle of where we were going to be, just to let them look at it. But to make a long story short, it increased everybody's awareness of the value of this land to them. And not long after we had purchased it and built it and moved in, the owner came by and said, do you like your view? We said, very much. He said, well, you might not have it much longer because I'm going to start selling the land for housing.
Oh, boy.
And that got everybody's attention. And I do feel if I hadn't have been a threat, if we hadn't been a threat, that galvanized them into saying, yes, let's do this, let's stop it there. And that's how I got involved, and that became our first project. And to this day, I look out there every day and see the same view I saw 40 years ago. It was a good early project.
And it was true that Jack, while he's trying to put a negative on this, he really galvanized the neighborhood into looking and understanding what the possibilities were. He was important in presenting that view to his neighbors to make this incredible project and an incredible start to this project happen.
And to be fair to JSB, who then was the president of Maine Coast Heritage Trust, lovely man, still good friends of ours, an occasional fishing buddy. He came in and explained this whole thing. He'd gone to Bowdoin and Yale Environmental, and in a very, very appealing way, described some of the benefits, the pros and the cons, the things you had to have lined up to make this happen. And we went on from there. Jay remained a wonderful friend and counsel.
But I think one of the important things we've got to say here is that connection with humans and land is an important part of the health of our world. Land conservation is part of something that benefits everybody. It benefits the way we look at ourselves, the way we are able to have a happy life. Deep down, all of us are naturally connected to our world, and boy, when we start to look at the world as a way, as something we're part of and not trying to control, that is so important, and that creates a whole different vision that has made the Land Trust, in all it's done, so successful. We have a motto of building community, and that building community is with people, with land, with nature, with wildlife, with whatever we can do to make us part of this world, not apart from it. The ride I took with a fellow who was on the board at that point, the organization wasn't very old. I don't think more than 4 or 5 years old. And Brooks Stoddard was on the board, and he talked to me because he knew of my love of agriculture, he knew of my love of wildlife, that it was part of my bloodstream. And when he explained that and what they had done with protecting the meadow, it clearly clicked with me. I said, this is something I want to be part of. This is something that is not only going to help our community, it's going to help me, to be real selfish about it. And it was a good group of people all thinking about the same thing, particularly what I mentioned, Warren and Marilyn Dwyer, that were important parts. They had been involved with the Land Trust down in Lincolnville, in Massachusetts, and they came up here with the understanding of that organization, and they were working with Jack and the others to get this thing going. And boy, when I heard that story, it just struck a bell with me that was excellent, and I knew I had to be part of it. I could see that this was a way to go.
And now he's Mr. Land Trust, one of the best fundraisers I've ever seen.
I remember such things as, my mother, about this time of year, mid-April, said, "All right, Tommy, it's time for you to go down and check the wildflowers in the woods." And she began, what was happening at that time of year with what's going on in nature. And Dad had he was forced to quit school at the 8th grade, eventually convinced the University of Dayton to take him on as a college student without even going to high school, and he was a science guy. One crazy example that was wonderful is in the spring of the year, he would, "All right, Tommy, go get a bucket and a shovel." And what we did is our fields were all in a rotation so that not every year they were in the same kind of crop. They were rotated through corn and oats and then meadow and covered with manure and then back into a cycle, all of which was enriching that soil. But the way he decided to determine whether it was enriched, we would take a dissect across the field that was going to be in corn. And what he did with the shovel is he would take a shovelful and he'd count the number of earthworms in that shovelful, with the idea being that the more organic that was there and the more richness had been put back into the soil, the more there were going to be. And he had a big poster in the dairy barn where we milked the cows up on the wall. On one side was the field numbers, across the top was the year, and he put the number, the average number per shovelful would go into that for that field. And so it was a great way to connect with a better way to even connect with the soil and all. And so that kind of upbringing clearly made the importance that what we had to do with the Land Trust and understanding where our food came from, and understanding that the health of the soil was directly connected to the quality of stuff we ate, that we should be understanding the whole of the place we're in, and also understanding that we had to conserve it, that we had to keep, there had to be the other thing that's really important here is that there's a voice for development. There's a push for the housing development, and we need houses. We absolutely need houses. But there's no voice unless it's the land trust or conservation organizations for who's going to and how are we going to conserve the land that is important for us to conserve. There has to be that voice, and that's what the land trust does. It's that voice that's never there unless we do it. There's automatic voice for housing development and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's why I got involved, and that's the important part of it.
I mean, we had a backyard and a patio. And instead of agriculture, just a lot of booze was drunk there. It was a very social community. My parents had these cocktail parties. The one thing, my father made a business out of being a middleman for hardwood from the northern Midwest to Chicago. Chicago back in the 40s and 50s was the major furniture making.
A lot of it came from Michigan, didn't it?
Yeah, from northern Michigan.
A lot of that wood.
Yeah. And so he became a middleman and got quite wealthy doing this. He's a bright guy. But I think my dad's particularly background was so, I mean, he worked in the woods. His father ran horses in the woods. He was trying to get away from all that. So we lived in an elegant house that he built with hardwood that he brought down. I said he didn't build it himself, but he supervised the project. And the only thing I remember as a kid is my aunt, who was highly educated and brought this New Yorker into my purview, had a cottage on a lake in Wisconsin, a very nice place. And I used to go up there in swell, and sometimes I'd stay alone. We'd just have these long talks surrounded by this beauty and these ponds and these lakes. And I read a little bit about it, but not much. But I realized I really liked to be in that kind of environment. Getting into fly fishing was like a knife into the center of something I'd wanted to be in and never knew how to get there.
It's very true. Salmon and trout don't live in ugly places, and so it automatically exposes you to some places. So gosh, we got to have those.
Yeah, and I was out with guys like Tom, who I love, and all these other guys. These became my basis of my friendship. I don't have any close friends that don't fish. And getting in those environments, some of them just utterly awesome, just made you better attuned to what was beautiful and what was worth saving. I quit teaching and quit graduate schools. I got very tired of reading other people's books and trying to stuff what they were trying to say in young minds. I was essentially very goal-oriented. I wanted to see something happen and be able to touch it, or feel it, or see it, or smell it, whatever.
And it was important here to understand his skills of writing, his skills of communication were so essential. He was, talk about German, he was a guy when he got focused, this project, if it's one that we really decide is going to happen, it's going to happen. And so
Same is true of Roscoe over here, too.
Well, we were a good team in that sense, that when we looked at something that we thought had value and that many people said could not happen, right, we said, let's go it.
As much as we love the New England Yankee, they take reticence too far sometimes. They can get stuck up in their cultural rituals and say, we're not going to make fools out of ourselves. I have never minded, as you can see already, making a fool out of myself.
That's for sure.
That's for sure.
I think the big thing that was important with Crystal Spring Farm, it was the pinnacle. It was what really focused all of us, more so than ever. A gal that was working with me, who was part of the family, came in and said, the Dion family, and bless their heart for talking to us. Donna Dion came in and she said, there's going to be 300 houses on this 160 acres of gorgeous farmland right on the edge of Brunswick. And I kind of gulped. I mean, I was an old farm guy, and so I immediately called Jack. I got on the back of Donna's motorcycle. Jack met us at the meadow, at the meadow that was now for sale. We said, all right, let's get going. Let's see what this is going to be like. And so we did an appraisal, and the appraisal came back, as I remember, at $690,000. No, that was the appraisal came at 400 and some thousand. The selling price, the realtors had offered 690,000 for the 160 acres. And the Dion family said, if the land trust will match that price, the land trust can have it. We went back, our board of directors said, oh my gosh, we don't have any money. And thanks to the persistence of this really great executive director we had, and a bullheaded myself, we said, if our land trust is worth its weight in salt, this is a project that's going to happen. We were able to sign a purchase and sale agreement to purchase this land. And one of the brilliant things that this guy figured out is that what we will do is we will make payments once a year, and we will buy 40 acres at a time and take clear title of it. So if we fail in the midst, we were going to have something, going to have it done.
And then there was also the next step. I'm not sure it was my idea.
Oh, I think it was.
Might have been. It sounds too brilliant for me. The last one is the house, the whole middle, the guts of the place. So there's this continuing pressure that built kind of naturally. Tom said it was important, even though I had no formal land trust. I didn't go on to Yale Environmental, but I was a very fluent communicator and writer, and I knew how to do news releases, and I knew everybody at the paper. And I could call them with something, and I'd say, I hope you can use it. I'd like it in the Friday paper, and I think this is where it belongs. They would have laughed at anybody else, but they knew I had the experiences, and I think a photo would do well here. And I had very cooperative people. They helped, the paper helped us a lot by publishing. And then I believed in sublimity. You keep throwing them big messages and small messages, big messages and small messages. And I learned to take this tiniest thing, $12 more from the kitty to our $3 million effort. And then you could use this in the pyramid style of going through this and at the end say, the BTLT is a nonprofit, it has 1,000 members, it's desperately like, and give them the address. And you do this day after day, week after week, week after week, and it works. So if you're not ready to put in that kind of time and pay that kind of attention and learn to use the outlets that are there, you can't get anywhere.
And we also understood when we got into this project how important it was to the community. We had signed the purchase and sale agreement, and on a cold February day, we had an open house inviting the community to come. And the key thing, the Dion farm had been an important dairy farm with an ice cream stand. And some of the older people of the community had come there. You know, it's only a mile and a half from the center of Brunswick. And so this was a place not unfamiliar with them. Anyway, this February day, we had over 500 people come back onto that land to ice skate, to sled, to do some face painting. We had all kinds of things going on just to have the community be there. And we were overwhelmed. We had no idea we were going to get that kind of, we thought maybe we'd get 50 or 75, maybe 100 people, but over 500. And we said, we could make this work.
This is a pivotal thing.
This was very
Up
pivotal.
until this time, even Tom and I think, were prepared to sell it with an easement. With the protection would have been done. But back at the back of both of our minds, and I was beginning to understand that a land trust with ambitious missions cannot manifest these if they give a conservation easement, because they can't maintain that kind of control. That kind of control comes with fee ownership. And we decided that's what we needed, and Tom and I talked more and more about, if we get this, we can get the farmer in, we can get the community support, we can do the trails, we can do the education in the schools. We can have special events and walks, bird walks, all of that stuff.
It had a lot of pieces that were just
Very
hit right on the head
diverse.
that could be so important. And when we made that decision that we were going to keep it and really try and develop it as a community resource as much as we could, the land trust became born.
Saving it was the first step. And then if you're good, you let the land tell you what it needs to be. Right. If there's a lot of endangered species, if it's in a watershed, leave it alone, maybe a little minor trail in and out. But a place like Crystal Spring Farm that held the potential to serve so many populations. Just the old folks that were driving by in their old Plymouths. They go out, I still go out of my way to go take that drive out of town. If we could only save this one place, the land trust would have done its job.
Yeah, and if the Dion family would not have been willing to allow us to work on it, it would have not happened. And I think the Land Trust would have been a totally different organization than it is now. It was so pivotal for so much that happened later. And the fact that then it became a site for the farmers market, became a site for the community garden, it became so much more. I had been involved with starting a farmers market in downtown Brunswick, and so I knew the farmers that were vending at the thing. And so we had a discussion. There was some little bit of friction going on here. And I said, well, what's the matter? Well, you're in fact leasing the farm to somebody who didn't have to buy it. You're putting it in competition with us. Well, what can we do to help? We need more ways to market. I said, well, let's start another farmer's market. And so in combination and in consultation with the group that was running the downtown market, which I was part of, we created a farmer's market on a different day. And it has now won the award as one of the best farmer's markets, not only in Maine, but in New England. And we have between 35 and 45 vendors there, close to well over $1 million in sales, and providing an increased opportunity for us to raise more of our own food and to sell more of our own food.
It's wonderful, and it's become...
yeah, it's but that part was important in terms of the growth of what happened with Crystal Spring Farm. And now we're doing things with immigrants, with new Mainers, with the Wabanakis, with recognizing that this land was their land to start with, and the fact that we so respect that, and that we are trying to do what we can now to let the Wabanaki be part of what we're doing. We've created some garden space, which they are totally in charge of. It's become built so much into what is really good about this community, and every time I think about it, it just makes me smile. I mean,
Makes me want to cry.
It is. It's only, it's still not at an end at where it can be, that's for sure.
But we're in the right direction, and I think the Land Trust that had a brain in their head went in that direction. I think it was inevitable that once that land got taken up, people would start to ask, well, how can we use it? What's the appropriate use for that? And they should all be asking that question. And boy, we find a few places where public access, I mean, we've got some great trail systems over at Bradley Pond Farm, right along the Cat-Hance River, a 6-mile loop right through Crystal Spring Farm, another little one, the Schofield Preserve. I haven't been there in 35.
Oh,
I haven't been there in 35
Oh,
years.
I've been there. It's wonderful.
It's cute. Tom and I and others had made a very good, solid foundation. Very clear that Crystal Spring Farm, and I think our current director, who is I can't overstate this enough, an incredibly talented, gracious, and intelligent person. We could not have found anybody in the United States with more resources and a better attitude and temperament and personality than Angela Twitchell. And that's why, since I've left, so many other things have taken off. Back then, we were entrenched in just one project at a time. I think it was always there. I know it was always there with Tom, but you got to do, you can't build the building until you got the place to put it. One thing I hated, even when we started, was this Land Trust being, and it was true, a tool of the wealthy, where they basically put easements on their land to reduce the taxes so that they could keep it in their family with nobody else able to use it in continuity. And that was a tough one to get over. But it also, started a fair amount of resentment. The rich people sequestering, blah, blah, blah. That isn't the way we wanted to go.
At the federal level, that was understood. So there now is a certification program that the BTLT is part of, that, how do you go about protecting land for the benefit of people, not for the benefit of individuals? And so we are an accredited organization that understands all of that stair-step way and how to make that happen.
It's no baby step application
No, it's not either.
We actually had to hire somebody that could do that. I couldn't do it. I could have, but it would have been a piece of crap.
And now we have just come back together with an organization called CREA, where we are, with that organization, becoming much more involved with environmental education in the school systems. There is still opportunities just around the corner that can really bring our community into an even stronger place, connecting with land and connecting with soil and connecting with people.
There'll be a point where there'll not be really any more land to preserve. It'll be done. And then stewardship was the programs, how we use the properties we have, how to continue to educate people to take care of this wonderful place. I think the thing I'm proudest of in my life, besides out fishing him most of the time, is to have been part, not true, he's a very good fisherman, is to have been part of something that's so enduring. As I go way back when I quit the graduate school, I want something that's concrete, besides my head. And we got it. I've said it to 1 million kids. The first step is to volunteer. And very seldom, unless you're highly decorated with this, just going to walk in right out of college and say, I want to help. You'll volunteer. Work for nothing or a tiny step in, make a difference, and they'll say, listen, you're just the person we need. We'd like you to start at $10 a year.
Well, I think those are all good and absolutely good ways to do it. And the part that is really important is to find out what you're really good at, what you like to do. Mm-hmm. And what you like to do is what you're going to be good at. And making connections with humans and this great world that we have, this great earth that we have, the great nature that we have, can use all that skill. And no matter what it is, whether it's being an accountant, for God's sakes, even land trusts need accounting.
Oh, God.
If it's doing videos, we need people who do great videos. But it all connects, and whatever you really like to do. But I tell you what, when you work as a volunteer and you get involved with nature, what you get back is a lot more than you'll ever give. We've now been able to protect quite a bit of land, and it's now our responsibility as an organization to make that land be as good as it can be. And that's not a small responsibility. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort. And as we've grown to acquire land, that's become more of a responsibility. But I think, I think the horizon is amazing with the leadership the Land Trust has, with the opportunities that are there. Boy, it'd be fun to take another look at it in 100 years.
You'll be around. You'll be around.
I don't want to be.
No. There is.
I think another 4 or 5 years, that's enough.
I already feel I've had my quota of air and water and single malt scotch. I'm ready for the next person to come. Every time I go to my workout, take me now, just make it pleasant.